As a mentalist, it simply means that I'm an entertainer. I'm taking my 5 known sense to create the illusion of a 6th sense.
Fingertips on top of table. Table will follow the fingertips into the air, defying the laws of gravity.
Some people cannot believe that a magician can fool them in such a way that they can't figure it out. But magicians can, and magicians do. Don't be too sure of yourself. No matter how smart or well-educated you are, you can be deceived.
It's magic, all right, but the table is helped along in its rise by a couple rulers the boys have stuck up their sleeves and under the table edge.
Whether it's sleight of hand, misdirection, or psychological manipulation, we all know that magicians can and do fool us. If you've been watching my series exposing psychics, you also know that many psychics have been caught using various magic tricks. But have psychics ever been able to demonstrate their abilities under scientifically controlled conditions? And if so, did they fool the scientists using trickery? Just how hard is it for a psychic to fool a scientist?
We present a case of a double-blind experiment in which someone places an object into a can chosen at random from 10 aluminum cans. Geller's task now is to determine which of these 10 cans holds the steel ball bearing. He has made his choice. The steel ball is found.
What I do is real.
This is Uri Geller, one of the most famous psychics of the 20th century. In the 1970s, he drew massive attention for demonstrating psychic abilities at the Stanford Research Institute, not affiliated with Stanford University. So much so that the Department of Defense sent a psychologist and former magician, Dr. Ray Hyman, to investigate and check for trickery. This was during the Cold War, and the prospect of using psychic warfare against the Soviets wasn't something that the US government could risk passing up. After thorough investigation, Hyman determined that there was no verifiable evidence of psychic abilities, and shortly afterwards the CIA cut funding to their psychic research branch because after years of testing, it yielded no actionable intelligence.
He's a fraud, but you can't blame people for believing him. Geller is more the product of a wonderful public relations campaign than he is the product of being a clever illusionist. What the public gets is only one side of the story. For example, I spent the whole day with him, and I know some other scientists who spent quite a bit of time with him who weren't impressed with him. He's been caught cheating several occasions.
Cheating how? What kind of cheating?
Oh, they've caught him switching envelopes. His girlfriend, Hannah Strang, has confessed to the Israeli weekly, Halom Hazeh, that she helped sitting in the audiences with him, coding him. She and her brother, Shippy Strang, was always with him, coding information to him from his for his shows.
Coding information.
Sending signals to him about, one of the things he does on his show is he has people write on a blackboard. His back is to the blackboard, but he's facing the audience. They sit in the audience and code to him, signal him by hand signals, what was written on a blackboard.
Geller was later exposed live on The Tonight Show by Johnny Carson, who was informed ahead of time as to how exactly Uri was doing his tricks.
I said, okay, what I would like you to do with the little aluminum film cans is I would like you to coat them on the bottom with rubber cement. Don't glue them down to the tray, just coat the bottoms and let them dry. But when they're put on the tray, they won't skid then. I said, because the way he does the film can thing is he rotates the tray and he sees which ones move differently.
He is really suspicious, you know. I'm having a hard time with you.
I don't mean to be, right? I really don't.
Just keep looking. Okay, let me rest a little, all right?
All right. Uri was telling me you don't feel, what, strong tonight?
I don't feel strong. It's not all tonight. Right now I'm feeling being pressed, and then I can't...
Well, I'm not trying to press you, I really not. I'm not trying to be skeptical. I would love to see these things, I really would.
But Uri's celebrity status was unaffected, and to many the jury still seemed to be out as to whether or not he actually possessed psychic abilities.
Magicians say no, nonsense, I duped the scientists. They say I fooled them. They always find loopholes. I challenge them and tell them, look, why don't you go and do it in a laboratory the way I was tested?
So in 1979, Washington University set up Project Alpha at the McDonnell Laboratory to scientifically test for the existence of psychic abilities. But unbeknownst to them, their 2 research subjects, Steve Shaw and Michael Edwards, were actually magicians, determined to show just how easily even scientists could be fooled without the proper safeguards in place. The magician James Randi advised the scientists as to ways to safeguard their experiments.
We have a point of view of the magician. We know how people are fooled and how they fool themselves, which is even more important.
One of Randi's caveats was mark every item with an indelible mark or a scratch that couldn't be replicated, something that was permanent, and it was something that we couldn't duplicate on the spot.
But their flexibility on those safeguards allowed Shaw and Edwards to fool the scientists for over 4 years.
It was very quickly, though, that Steve and I tried to almost line by line get them to violate every one of those caveats in one way, shape, or form. The parapsychologists, in their infinite wisdom, decided that they would simply use paper tags with string.
Can we get this tag off here? Sure. Just slide it up.
We took these paper hanging tags off of the spoons to make them easier to work with. As everybody was focusing on one spoon, it was a simple matter to lean on the control spoon and later switch those two tags so the control spoon looked like the experimental spoon.
Yeah, it's markedly different. Of course it is.
After a long day of testing and where nothing really happened, I guess something spectacular happened because we got a call very early the next morning. It said it looked like a psychic tornado had hit the Mac lab. And they were very amazed by this, and they really kind of put that or gave credit to the fact that it was, like, in their own words, a psychic tornado had hit, but it was the cause of us building up all of our energies that day and being frustrated by not having it work, and it hit at night.
Yeah.
Now, the fact was, I couldn't pick the locks. As you know, I used to be an escape artist. I couldn't pick the locks to get into the lab, but I could leave one of the windows open. And Steve and I, at 2 in the morning, slipped into the lab, twisted all the metal we could find to move the objects around, changed the times on the clocks, and then surreptitiously got out of the building without leaving any trace of that.
I don't believe they're tricking us, especially based on the research that we've done in the last year, where we have exerted as tight a control condition as we could think of, even in consultation with magicians, to see if the influence holds up. And we have found evidence that it does. Not as strongly under these control conditions. It's as if somehow the extra controls seem to inhibit it, but still an effect persists.
Can you tell us, how do you do it? To be quite honest, we cheat.
It just goes to show how easily even the most scientifically minded of us can be fooled if we're not careful.
Lawrence Livermore Labs has a bunch of physicists, all PhDs, I'm sure. I got a call from one of them a couple of years back. Said, "Oh boy, you're $1 million prize. It's won. Say goodbye to it." Said, "I'll come." Well, a physicist from Israel came over here and brought with him a fellow named Ronnie Marcus. Ronnie Marcus was doing the Uri Geller act, bending spoons and reading the contents of sealed envelopes and good stuff like this, all stuff which has been in the magician's repertoire for generations now. They said, we put him through a test, and he passed. He's the real thing, all right. This is what fooled him at Lawrence Livermore Labs. He asked them to get him a box of matches, ordinary box of matches, and of course, being scientists, they examined it with laser beams, scanned it in infrared and ultraviolet, weighed it to the millionth of a gram, way, way down there, examined each one of the matches very carefully, photographed it, polarized light, the whole thing, everything you can imagine. Complete analysis, made sure there were no threads, wires, magnets, nothing unusual about it. They got it themselves from Morton's Steakhouse. And they gave it to Ronnie Marcus, and this is what he did.
He placed it in the back of his hand like this, and he said to them, whoops, he said, watch. The box will actually begin to rise. Look at this, it's rising. It's actually rising in the back of the hand. And it rose up, and then he said, and then when I relax the psychic power, it sinks back down again. Now, I don't know how it was done. But I'm working on it. As a matter of fact, this little parlor trick is in a book called Martin Gardner's Encyclopedia of Impromptu Tricks. It's very simple. You simply squeeze some of the skin on the back of your hand into the box as you close the box, and you like this, and it rises straight up like that, and then it goes all the way down again. A miracle of a semi-religious nature.
Stay skeptical. If you're looking for the paranormal and hoping to find it, without the proper safeguards to protect you from trickery, you probably will.
In the case of parapsychology, for example, I'm open-minded. There may be something to parapsychology, but most experimental psychologists are waiting for some kind of really repeatable evidence that will prove the claims of the parapsychologists. And they've been working on this now for almost a century, and they still have not come up with an experiment that can be replicated. The only explanation they give for the fact that that skeptics can't replicate their experiments is they say the skeptic's mind influences the experiment and causes negative results. So there's no way to argue against that. It just means that parapsychology will forever be in limbo with the parapsychologists getting positive results and the skeptics forever failing to replicate replicate the experiment.
The director of that program thought it was a very lousy thing to do.
No.
It was quoted as saying that you probably set back the study of it and that it really...
If Philip said that, then my answer to my having set back the study of parapsychology is no. They tried to set it back. I brought it into the 20th century.
This video was sponsored by the Palomar Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Vista, California. You're probably wondering why a church wanted to sponsor a YouTube atheist, and I was too until I looked up their website. The Unitarian Universalists are a creedless group that unites on purely humanistic principles. They welcome people of all faiths, doubt, and non-belief. A lot of the UU Congregationalists are actually atheists who attend services for the community connections that we need without the religiosity that we don't. I got an email from a fan at the Palomar Unitarian Universalist Fellowship after I put out a list of local secular groups, and the church was offering to sponsor some of my videos even after I told them that I wasn't going to stop brutally criticizing religious dogma. And the UU church here in Tulsa was the only place that allowed us to hold our first atheist convention in the state of Oklahoma after we were turned down by a number of public and private venues. I've never been to a UU service, but I'm definitely going to go check one out this week, and I recommend that you do too, and we can share our thoughts and experiences on social media. I'll put a link in the video description that you can use to find a local fellowship. Thanks. And as always, dare to be curious, but don't drink the Kool-Aid.